Hello to the world and to the kingdom citizens. I greet you in the precious holy name of Yeshua Messiah, Yeshua HaMashiach, who said in his word, John 8:32, and ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Hi, I'm Dr. John Curry, Ambassador Pan-African, and welcome to the Embassy of the Kingdom of Heaven on Earth. If you want to follow this podcast, please subscribe to JC Global Embassy TV1. Ring the bell and hit the thumbs up button. I believe I have a message for you that's going to coincide with the message I gave to you roughly 6 to 7 days ago. And that message was then what we must tell our children. What we must tell our children. And basically that was about educating our children and not waiting on any other group to educate them about our history. That's right, about our history. And now I have something that I believe is going to help you understand it even clearer, because President Donald Trump wants to erase Black history, not just from the libraries, but from museums. And he wants this history to be erased so America can come across as this bright, pretty, shiny nation without all of the horrific murdering, raping, and all of those things that took place in America while we and our ancestors was going through slavery. I just thought you need to take a look at this clip.
An executive order has just been signed by Trump, one that could erase everything you thought you knew about America's past. The chains, the blood, the buried truth. No headlines, no outrage, just silence and a pen.
After another bold move by President Trump, this time taking aim at the Smithsonian Institution.
But why would a former president want museums to forget that? Let's find out. It didn't start with a press conference. There were no reporters in the room, no cheering crowds, no American flags waving on stage. Just a desk, a signature, and a smile. That's how the order entered history. Quiet. But what set it in motion may be the loudest rewriting of American memory in decades. The document is titled, Restoring Truth and Sanity to American History. A name so vague, so dressed in decency, you would almost miss the violence it contains. But behind its calm exterior is a blueprint, not for unity, but for erasure. It begins with a list: museums, archives, public institutions, cultural spaces where America's darkest truths live. Slavery, segregation, massacres, stolen lands. The order doesn't name them directly, but everyone knows which ones it means. The places that make you uncomfortable. The places where school trips turn silent. The places where history refuses to smile. Buried in the third paragraph, the real aim appears: to remove divisive narratives that undermine national cohesion. It doesn't say racism, it doesn't say injustice, but it doesn't need to, because when you target the narratives that cause discomfort, you're targeting the voices that were never comfortable to begin with. This isn't a new debate, but it's the first time it's come with federal enforcement. Under the new order, all institutions receiving government funds must undergo an ideological review. A team handpicked by the administration will examine every exhibit, every educational program, and every historical quote etched in stone or printed on paper. Their job? Identify content that portrays America as oppressive, unjust, or structurally unequal. Not wrong, not factually inaccurate, just divisive. And that's the loophole, that's the poison. Because once truth becomes optional, once historical pain is seen as a problem rather than a lesson, then memory itself is on a leash. The team leading this review isn't made of historians, not scholars, not educators. It's made of political allies, cultural critics, and ideologues. People who don't ask, is this true? They ask,
I took control, went solo, and built my own online knife empire. I love being a...
Does this make us look bad? And if the answer is yes, they recommend removal. Museums will be allowed to keep content that celebrates national progress, highlights American innovation, and supports cultural pride. But anything that drags the eye backward toward injustice, inequality, genocide, will be marked as a threat to public unity. Not offensive, not false, just inconvenient. And inconvenient history, under this new doctrine, has no place in the National Museum system. The order doesn't ban slavery exhibits. It doesn't outlaw mentioning Jim Crow. It doesn't say you can't speak of native boarding schools or redlining or lynchings. No, it's smarter than that. It simply starves them. Any museum that continues to feature such divisive themes risks losing all federal support. No funding, no grants, no partnerships, no protection. In short, history stays, but only if you can afford to tell it without the government's help, and most can't. Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. Smaller institutions are the most vulnerable. Local African American heritage centers, indigenous archives, LGBTQ+ memory projects, they run on shoestring budgets, passionate volunteers, and just enough grant money to stay open. Take away that support, and those doors don't just close. Those stories vanish. That's the brilliance of the strategy. No fires, no book burnings, just cold silence and quiet compliance. Erasure by exhaustion. And while the order doesn't include a blacklist, insiders know what's being watched. Words like systemic, institutional, white supremacy, and colonial legacy are now flagged in federal evaluations. Educators are being advised to use alternative phrasing. Institutions are told to focus on forward-looking narratives. What they mean is, stop talking about what happened, start pretending it didn't. And while the nation debates whether the order is legal, ethical, or even enforceable, the impact is already visible. Some museums are restructuring their exhibits. Others are preemptively censoring their panels. Tour guides are being told to avoid certain questions. Whole chapters of the American story are being shortened, softened, or skipped. And yet, no one hears the alarm, because there's no blood on the floor. Just empty gallery walls, once filled with names of the forgotten, are now replaced by flags and slogans. The executive order doesn't silence the truth with a hammer. It does it with a budget spreadsheet. This is how history is rewritten, not in battlefields or burned libraries, but in bureaucratic memos and silent compliance. And the question we now face isn't whether this is dangerous. The real question is, how are people reacting? It started with hesitation.
Delivering safe, clean, reliable, and affordable water to your family and ours.
The Lumify Effect. One drop dramatically reduces redness for brighter, whiter-looking eyes that make you go, wow, and a look that makes them go, whoa. Lumify eye drops work in 1 minute and
Not protest, not defiance. Just a brief pause in the halls of America's museums, like the moment after a storm siren, when everything goes still and no one's quite sure if the danger has passed or is just beginning.
We're going to listen to it anyway.
Within days of the order,
no matter how many
lit
times
up.
it's being interrupted.
Subject lines like urgent review required, compliance update,
to
and
know what's going
content
on.
audit request.
JC
They weren't laws,
Global,
not yet.
Embassy
They weren't
TV1.
demands, just guidance. But everyone knew what they meant. Change the story or risk everything. Boards of directors held emergency meetings. Communications teams scrubbed websites. Exhibit designers opened old files, looking at paragraphs they once wrote with pride. Paragraphs that now felt radioactive. Across the country, curators found themselves asking a question they never imagined they would face in America. Can we still say this? In a museum world once governed by historical accuracy, nuance, and truth-telling, the new era introduced a different metric: risk tolerance. Not, is this true, but will this get us flagged? The stakes weren't theoretical. Museums that defied the tone of the order began receiving phone calls. No threats, no legal letters, just check-ins. Just reminders that funding was being reviewed. Just enough to make sure the message was received. And slowly, changes began. A Black History Center in Georgia removed a segment on mass incarceration. A Native Cultural Museum in Arizona pulled its exhibit on boarding schools for reframing. A major city museum put its civil rights wing under maintenance with no timeline for return. None of these decisions were publicly linked to the order, but behind closed doors, staff whispered the same word: pressure. Because the pressure wasn't loud. It was quiet, administrative, chilling. This wasn't the first of censorship. It was the breath on your neck. In interviews later given off the record, several museum directors admitted they didn't even know what the new boundaries were. That was the point. The order was vague by design. Without a clear rule book, uncertainty became the weapon. Institutions began censoring themselves, not because they were forced to, but because they were afraid not to. And that's how silence spreads. One museum removes a single plaque. Another changes the wording of a slavery exhibit. Another shortens its section on police violence. Each act is small, even justifiable on the surface. Budget, space, priorities. But together they create a new version of the national memory. Cleaner, simpler, less painful, less real. The fear wasn't only institutional. It seeped into individuals. Museum educators, those who give tours to children, families, and students, began rewriting their scripts. Words like oppression were softened. Phrases like white supremacy were swapped for racial dynamics. Some educators were told to let visitors ask first before addressing hard topics. In the Smithsonian Network, once known for its unapologetic truth-telling, a new tension brewed. Some staff wanted to speak out.
Great ideas can come from anywhere. With Wix, you decide where they go. Put your ideas into play with AI and watch them shape
out. Others warned against it. Meetings became hushed. Messaging became sanitized. The very places built to preserve difficult truth were now being trained to fear it. And for many, the moment that confirmed the shift wasn't a press release or exhibit closure. It was the sudden disappearance of the diversity, equity, and inclusion offices. These offices weren't just symbolic. They were structural. They represented a commitment to telling America's full story, to hire diverse voices, to address gaps in representation. In the wake of the executive order, several DEI offices were quietly disbanded, not with rage, but with resignation. Staff were reassigned, budgets were frozen, initiatives were put on hold indefinitely. It was a clean, bloodless purge, and it didn't make headlines. That's the thing. There was no national outcry, no massive protest movement, no primetime coverage. The museums didn't shut down. They didn't burn books or cancel tours. On the surface, everything looked normal. Field trips still came. Guides still spoke. People still walked through galleries, nodding in thought. But the content had changed. The tone had shifted. The air had thickened. The real damage wasn't in what was said. It was in what was now unsayable. And in that vacuum, something darker began to grow. Right-wing commentators, once fringe critics of woke history, began celebrating the order as a turning point. Culture war pundits took credit for the cleansing of liberal bias in historical institutions. Conservative PACs began sending out fundraising emails declaring victory over Marxist museums. And slowly, new proposals began circulating. National standards for historical exhibits, new review boards for federally funded education programs, and even legislation that would penalize anti-American content. The executive order, it turned out, was only step one. What started as an invisible directive had opened a door, and now ideologues were lining up to walk through it. And the institutions meant to hold the line, they were already folding under the weight of silence. So now the question is what this means for Black people. When a government rewrites its history books, the first thing that disappears isn't a date, it's a people. For Black Americans, this order isn't abstract. It's not a policy debate or a culture war headline. It's personal, it's ancestral, it's an erasure with fingerprints, and those fingerprints are fresh. Because when slavery is downplayed, it's not just a historical fact being buried, it's generations of trauma being denied. And when museums are stripped of the truth, Black families lose something deeper than documentation. They lose evidence, recognition, legitimacy, acknowledgement that what happened to them wasn't just real, it mattered. The African American experience in the United States has always been a fight to be seen. From plantation fields to protest lines, every chapter has been a demand for visibility. So what happens when the highest office in the country signs an order that makes visibility a threat? You don't just disappear from the museum wall. You start to disappear from the national conscience. Under this order, the history of slavery is allowed. but only if it's softened. The brutality of lynching is mentionable, but preferably without photographs. Jim Crow, technically included, but only in passing. Structural racism, redacted. And that's where the real damage lies. Because this isn't about removing one or two controversial exhibits. It's about retraining the national gaze, so that when Americans think of Black history, they don't see chains or marches or protests. They see jazz, they see sports, they see smiling faces and filtered pride. In short, they see the version that doesn't make them uncomfortable. And for millions of Black people, that's more than insulting. It's infuriating, because the truth is uncomfortable. It should be. It's supposed to be. A nation built on forced labor, racial fear, and centuries of legal exclusion should not get to celebrate its progress without first confronting the blood it costs. But under this order, even the blood becomes politically inconvenient. Black scholars have already begun reporting changes in access to research materials. Community projects that once received grants to document oral histories are seeing delays, denials, or silent withdrawals. School boards in conservative districts are removing content related.
Just wanted you as subscribers to know this. America is getting away with nothing. God is watching, and he's seen all we have been through from the 1400s up to now. So I say to Black America and to those that have been waiting on God to move, I say to you right now, God is moving right now. This is the last straw where God is moving and America will be judged by God.
To Black Lives Matter. College professors are being warned not to politicize their lectures when discussing police violence. And inside homes, a quieter pain is growing. Parents are struggling to explain to their children why the same textbooks that once included Harriet Tubman and Malcolm X now read like brochures for unity and forgiveness. Grandparents who lived through segregation are watching their lived experiences being softened for the sake of public unity. How do you teach your child to be proud of their heritage when the government is actively cutting that heritage from the national story? For many Black Americans, the answer is clear. You don't wait for the government. You preserve the story yourself. Community centers are now holding independent workshops. Churches are turning Sunday schools into history classrooms. Digital archives are expanding faster than ever because people know what's at stake. This isn't just a policy shift, it's a cultural emergency. And in the face of it, many are realizing something profound. If the government can erase Black history, it can erase Black pain. And if it can erase Black pain, it can erase Black demands. Because if the story of inequality is never told, then the need for justice no longer exists. This is the most chilling outcome of all. When Black history is treated as dangerous, Black identity becomes a threat. When resistance is framed as division, activism becomes insurgency. When truth becomes controversial, Black truth tellers become enemies of the state. And this time, it's not the police who are doing the silencing. It's the policy. It's the paperwork. It's the quiet decisions made in federal offices by people who will never walk into a segregated school or a red line neighborhood, but who now control how those places are remembered, or whether they're remembered at all. So for Black Americans, this isn't just about museums. It's about belonging. It's about safety. It's about survival. Because when a system begins to erase your history, it is never long before it starts erasing your future. And that's why many are asking, if we let them rewrite the story now, what will they erase next? Now the question is, what does this cover-up tell us about the U.S.? You don't cover up what you're proud of. You cover up what you're ashamed of. And right now, the United States is covering hard. This executive order isn't just a culture war move. It's a confession. Proof that the country's institutions at their highest levels are fundamentally unwilling to face what they've done. Instead of owning up to centuries of oppression, exploitation, and systemic injustice, the U.S. has chosen to hide the evidence. And not because it's gone, but because they know it's still hauntingly real. In any decent society, truth is the beginning of repair. Acknowledging the damage is the first step toward justice. But here, Truth is treated like a threat. Honesty is seen as unpatriotic. And museums that dare to show the scars of the past are now being labeled divisive, dangerous, and even anti-American. But what does that say about America itself? If your national identity falls apart at the mention of slavery, then your identity was never built on truth. It was built on denial, on fantasy, on selective memory. This is corruption, not just in politics, but in morality. A country that demands loyalty while hiding its sins isn't asking for unity. It's asking for silence. What's happening now is not the behavior of a confident nation. It's the behavior of a guilty one. A nation so afraid of its reflection that it will smash the mirror rather than fix the face staring back. Instead of repairing the broken systems, school segregation, police brutality, generational poverty, health disparities, America is investing time and energy in scrubbing the story clean. The logic is simple. If the pain can be hidden, then so can the responsibility. And if no one remembers the crime, then maybe no one will demand justice. It's not just cowardice, it's convenient. Fixing systemic racism requires work, money, and power redistribution. But hiding it, that's cheap, that's quick. That just takes a signature. That's why this order was never about unity. It was about control. Because the moment a nation begins to forget the crimes committed against its people, it also forgets its obligation to make things right. The reparations stop. The policies stall. The activists are demonized. And the victims, they're told to move on. But how do you move on from something the country won't even admit happened? America wants to close the book without reading the pages. It wants to be applauded for progress without paying the price of truth. And that's not strength, that's rot. Because when a nation hides its history, it's not healing, it's decaying. Why is the United States so terrified of its reflection? Let us know in the comments section. How does a nation that preaches human rights so proudly, so loudly, turn around and erase an entire people's history simply because the truth makes it uncomfortable? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.
JC Global, Embassy TV 1.